On the show this week, we have Kandarp Singh, MD Tetra Pak South Asia.
And we're seeing that there's a massive consumption boom that is expected to take place in rural India, and that is yet another massive opportunity. So I think there are enough catalysts in place to still drive a 20% growth rate going forward.
And in news, Martin Kaymer wins the US Open, and Park NB wins the Manulife Financial LPGA Classic. Lovely tee off, Kandarp.
Thank you.
So let's talk about the Indian packaging industry now. It is growing at a stellar rate of 15% per annum, and in the next 5 years, it is likely to triple and hit a figure of $60 billion as well. What's your estimate like, and are these figures close to the estimates that you have at Tetra Pak?
Well, certainly. I think, we've seen growth rates of close to 15 to 20% over the last 5 years.
Right.
And there's nothing that suggests that those growth rates will not sustain in the next 5 years. So I think those are pretty realistic numbers.
Right. What are the catalysts to these growth? Liberalization, better economic policies? What do you think is leading to a figure like that?
Well, I think there are a number of catalysts to the growth we're seeing in the packaging sector. And to start with, it's really around the urbanization, the mega trends of urbanization that is happening across the developing economies, and we see that in India as well.
Right.
But coupled with that, we also see a fairly big shift in consumer attitudes towards food, and that's also being driven by nuclear families, more women in the workforce, and the fact that therefore convenience is seen as something that is sought after today. So that's leading to the entire growth of ready-to-eat foods, So I think if you look at that, those are some big catalysts going forward. The other one that I think is coming in recently is the growth of rural India.
Right.
And we're seeing that there's a massive consumption boom that is expected to take place in rural India, and that is yet another massive opportunity. So I think there are enough catalysts in place to still drive a 20% growth rate going forward.
Time now for me to tee off and we continue our conversation.
Sure. That's better. Nice shot.
Thank you.
That was clean.
Thank you. So how has Tetra Pak's growth really been in the processing business?
Yeah, in the both the processing equipment business has been also a very, very strong growth in the last 5 years. We've seen a huge investments being made across the dairy and beverage sector.
Right.
So we're looking at, in fact, the last 3 years, we've seen a 50+% growth CAGR in our equipment business, which is a fantastic lead indicator.
Absolutely.
Because it actually tells you that the industry is building capacity for the future.
Sure.
And that's a great sign. And we see that this growth is going to continue. We see a very strong pipeline of projects that we are bidding for with many of the key players in both the dairy and beverage sector.
Interesting. As far as the machinery is concerned for packaging materials as well, we are seeing that we are importing a lot from Germany and Italy. But now I guess the focus is now shifting towards countries like Korea and China. Could you throw some light or opinionate on why this is happening? I know you're into packing materials,
sure,
but we'd love to know why this is happening.
Well, we work with machinery as well,
okay,
and of course, like in most industries, there is of course a shift in manufacturing base from the developed world to the developing world, and that's likely to continue because of course of obvious reasons of a lower cost,
right,
and therefore being more competitive,
right,
and also being able to cater to the emerging markets that are demanding much more affordability
sure,
than ever, right? So I think that trend is likely to continue, but of course I think Germany and Italy still have a very strong base, and I do not see that going away in the near future because they are seriously upholders of quality, you know, and you get still the best quality equipment from some of those countries, and the quality standards are next to none. But they will also start looking at setting up base in Asia as well. So those companies that are based today or headquartered out of Germany and Italy are of course going to start looking at, and they have already started doing that, looking at setting up bases in these countries where they can work from a lower cost base.
The per capita consumption of packaging materials in India stands at $15 versus the rest of the world standing at $100. But why is that phenomena existing?
Well, you know, I think it's not just the per capita consumption on packaging. I think in most categories, per capita consumption is actually much lower than if you compare to many of the developed world, and even China for that matter, where consumption has boomed. I think to a large extent it's to do with the fact that India is still largely rural. You know, and the rural part of India is still to quite some extent underserviced, you know, and whether products are not being able to reach those areas, whether it's in terms of availability or affordability, on both those counts. So I think you know, there's a large unorganized sector as well that exists in the overall food industry, right? Almost 75% is either unorganized or small and medium enterprises. So it's only about 25% of the industry is organized, and I think that's what needs to change to be able to drive consumption further, you know, and in tune with what's happening at the consumer level, because the consumer trends are not only restricted to urban India. I think they will also play out in rural India as well in the coming decade.
So, you know, it's an interesting point that you brought out. We will touch upon this point about how the consumer trends are reaching out to rural India in the next 1 decade as well, and the problems that we face today in India as far as food chain supply logistics is concerned. But take a break. We will see you on the other side and discuss this.
I think we look at dairy as pretty much, if not one of the biggest priorities for us, for Tetra Pak, you know, operating in India.
Thank you for staying with us on Tea Time, and welcome back. Now, India is one of the largest producers of food next to China world over. In fact, the food processing industry has grown over 13% thereabouts in the last 4 years as well. Do you think India's potential somewhere as far as food is concerned is largely remaining untapped by players like you at the moment? And there is more potential going forward to be tapped, which you all haven't been able to, considering you even spoke about the proliferation into rural areas as well, which has not happened now.
Oh, absolutely. I think without a doubt, you know, we have a long way to go. You know, considering the fact that there are many products, whether it's milk, mangoes, bananas, pulses, where India is #1 in terms of production. There are many others like sugarcane, tea, wheat, where we are #2. So we are right up there in terms of production and quantities. However, there are very big challenges in terms of bringing that produce into the consumer's hands, you know. And whether it's the warehousing infrastructure, the cold chain, the processing infrastructure, you know, and I think that requires some significant quantum leap in order to really get India into that league in terms of not just production, but actually making sure that it is getting into the markets, it's getting into the consumers, it's getting onto the table, you know, in the house. And I think that will require some interventions from all the stakeholders in the chain, whether it's the Ministry of Food Processing, or whether it's the manufacturers, or whether it's companies like ourselves who are supplying solutions to the manufacturers and brand owners. And I think this is where I'm very excited about our prospects and Tetra Pak's prospects, because the technology we bring fits in. It's almost like I feel it's made for India.
Interesting. Let's continue our game and we continue talking. Wow, that's phenomenal. So let's talk about your estimates for the dairy segment. I believe that's one of the reasons why Tetra Pak decided to enter India.
Oh yes, as I said earlier, dairy, you know, we are the largest dairy producing nation in the world. And You know, again, that's a huge opportunity, and we've seen tremendous growth in this segment over the past 3 to 5 years. You know, it is close to 130 million metric tons, you know, which is massive. You know, the nearest market that comes next to it is probably half of that amount. So it's a huge opportunity, and yet, of course, there are challenges as well. But I think we look at dairy as pretty much, if not the priority, one of the biggest priorities for us, for Tetra Pak, you know, operating in India. And, you know, going with the urbanization, the lifestyle changes, we are seeing that there is clear adoption of milk that we are packing in Tetra Pak packages because of the fact that it packs nutrition and it gives you safety. There is no adulteration. It's tamper-proof. So there are a number of things that are working in favor. But I have to also say, very interestingly, something that I feel very, very good about and passionate about, which is about reaching out beyond urban India. And what we've done over the past years is working in conjunction with our partners, with our business partners and our customers. We've tried to develop solutions that are trying to reach into interiors of India and even into parts of India that are milk deficient with smaller packaging, whether it's 100 ml or 200 ml, priced below 10 rupees, that make it more affordable, but more importantly, I think accessible. Because when you go into some of these parts, whether it's in the south of India or northeast of India, you see that there's a large swathes of population that are not even having access to milk, you know, because it cannot reach them. By the time it gets there, it gets spoiled. And that is why with our packaging and our technology, which has a long shelf life, you know, you can transport across the country. You know, or you can export out of the country. So, so I think they're extremely bullish on milk.
Let's go over your work environment a little bit. How much of these manufacturers play a role in the way you package these products, or how much do you play a role in the way they are manufacturing this product? Yeah,
well, I think, you know, if I would sum up in one word, I would say it's symbiosis. You know, I think we really have a very symbiotic relationship with our customers and our brand owners. And in that, we actually do a lot more than just be a packaging supplier that says, okay, here's a package, here's place an order and we'll supply it to you, how many trucks do you want? I think we spend a lot of time with many of our partners in identifying the trends that are panning out over the next 5-10 years, not just what's happening today. We partner with them a lot, doing a lot of consumer research, talking to consumers, really working out what really is going to change. And for instance, let me give you an example. So some years ago when we said, okay, look, we've got a huge opportunity in milk, and we're seeing some very good traction in that, but it's only coming through the big metros and the urban areas. If we want to go deeper in the pyramid, we've got to find something that is more affordable and that has got the functionality, may not have the shelf life, but maybe something that is just good enough for that consumer. And we went through a lot of research, we went through a lot of product trials, and today, you know, we've launched the carton pouch, which we call Tetra Fino, primarily in the south of India, with 200 ml and 100 ml packages, and they're growing exponentially. You know, they've really started to reach out to consumers that have not had access to liquid milk. So that whole process is a process of discovery. You know, it's not about us saying, well, here's what worked in another part of the world, why don't we try it in India? Of course, some of that is true. Being a multinational, we of course will try and do that.
You can't adapt to a cookie-cutter approach.
Exactly. We are very clear on that we have to do something that is made for India. And there are some good examples out there. As I just mentioned, the 100 ml packages, the 200 ml that we've launched with great success. That comes straight from the consumer. Very good.
Thank you.
Nice and easy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. On that note, it's a good time now for us to take a breather right here on Tea Time. We'll remain in conversation with Kandarp and discuss a little more in detail about the Indian packaging industry. Take a break. We will see you on the other side.
Because of its technology, you can't tamper with it. If you try to inject anything, once you open the package, it starts to blow up. It's very visible to a consumer that has been tampered with.
Thank you for staying with us on Tea Time, and welcome back. Now, the government of India has foreign direct investment policy, along with the revised investment guidelines, has facilitated more equity infusion into the agricultural and food processing sectors as well, which has resulted in a compounded annual growth rate of about 37% thereabouts. That's the industry estimate.
That's
but
right.
I think players and manufacturers like you are thinking that this is a bit of an overestimate given by the industry. What is your estimate really like as far as that's concerned? Do you think we're growing at a CAGR of 37%?
Well, you know, CAGRs are CAGRs. I guess what you've also got to factor in is that 11 and 12 were pretty tough years for FDI in this sector. So 13 has seen a bit of quite a big jump actually, and that's also created this CAGR of 37%. You know, I think with all the interventions that have been made, it could be slightly lower. I think it's very difficult to pin a number to it. If we look at the kind of growth rates we're seeing in the industry in general, we're talking about 15 to 20%. So my guess is more that a 20 to 30% CAGR is realistic to look at over the next 3 to 5 years.
Going forward.
Going forward,
okay.
That's right.
What are the global trends that will dominate this industry going forward?
Well, I think global trends when it comes to food packaging or food processing are going to be around some clear themes, you know, which is, we mentioned before, the food safety is one clear theme, nutritional quotient, the fact that health and wellness is going to become very important, not only in the West or in the developed world, because people say that's due to the aging population, but we also have a significant aging population in markets like these. We're talking about access being very important. How do you bring products to the market, the channels you use, the kind of retail structure that will develop over the years. I mean, we see a massive growth in e-retailing. You know, nobody has looked at from a food perspective, but I think that that's another very interesting opportunity.
Even for B2B players like you?
I think,
well,
I think
more
from a
driven from a B2C perspective.
Yes, so I think from a B2C perspective,
so people will buy food online.
I think it's inevitable that it's happening in other parts of the world.
All right, so let's talk about the large unorganized sector in this country today. Somewhere along the road, do you realize this as an opportunity or a deterrent at the moment?
Oh, certainly, undoubtedly an opportunity more than a deterrent. I think this is something that is unique to a market like India today, and probably does not exist in too many other geographies around the world. I mean, the size of the unorganized sector, for instance, in dairy, almost 2/3 of the sector is still unorganized today. You know, I think the opportunity is massive because this sector requires solutions that are tailored for to address the gaps that they face today, be it on infrastructure, how do they scale up to an industrial level, and that is where some of the interventions we referred to earlier will make a big difference, you know, because I think for me, I do not believe that it will just happen as a natural transition from unorganized to organized. I mean, if you look at it 3 years ago or 10 years ago, unorganized was still fairly significant and continues to be so. Now, we may choose to get frustrated about it and say, oh my God, why is this? And you know, this is the reason I can't grow. But I think we should force ourselves at all levels in the value chain, be it the ministries, be it us as producers or suppliers, to look at what is needed to ensure that that sector becomes more efficient and productive going forward.
Right. In terms of technological advancements in your sector as well, aseptic packaging you mentioned earlier, how much of it really is a boon, and can we dwell on that technology a little bit, and how is it going to help us in the future?
Very well. You know, aseptic packaging technology, it has been one of the breakthroughs when it comes to food. When you look at it was actually labeled as one of the breakthrough innovations of the 20th century, you know, in the packaging industry. And I think given the features of aseptic packaging, which is essentially you're able to process a product, kill the bacteria, you know, without affecting its nutrients or the quality of the product. And then you're able to package in this 6-layer packaging, which allows it to remain as it is for anywhere between 6 months to 12 or 18 months, depending on what you're packing inside. And more importantly, because of its feature, because of its technology, you can't tamper with it. If you try to inject anything, once you open the package, it starts to blow up. It's very visible to a consumer that has been tampered with. Secondly, very importantly, despite the fact that it provides long shelf life, you do not need to add any preservatives. So there is nothing required to be added, which is something that people generally tend to associate with anything that has long shelf life. You know? And I think that's what makes this technology very exciting.
All right, on that note, let's finish our game. Come. Let's talk about golf a little bit. You know, you come across as a very down-to-earth, humble person. A lot of humility is something that you really exude when one talks to you. Has the game taught you all of this?
Yeah, you know, well, you know, I started my dabble with golf, or my experience with golf, when I was, you know, a child, and I grew up in Calcutta, or Kolkata, and my father was a member of the Royal Calcutta Golf Club, and he was an avid golfer. So I used to accompany him and play, and I had a friend of mine in school with me as well, Aditya, who was actually a very avid golfer even when he was in his teens.
Right.
So I started going to the golf course, and I actually thoroughly enjoyed it. But then there was a massive hiatus of number of decades when I started to work and I traveled around. I somehow never got into it more because I didn't have the time. And when I moved back to India in 2009, I took it up again because I had a golf course right next to me, and I said, if I don't do it now, I will never do it. So I started there, and you know, I play golf for two major reasons. One is just to be in green surroundings. I love it. Maybe it's because I've lived in Europe for so long, and I just want to get back into a feel of just greenery, you know, a bit of sun as well, and that's why I usually play early in the morning. But I also play because I think it keeps me humble.
Really?
You know, it does add a very healthy dose of humility, you know, to you, because the days that you think you're king, and it takes one shot to figure out where you are in that grand scheme of things, you know. And I say in golf that, you know, I've joked with some friends that you hit two bad shots or a bad shot and you start hating the game. But it takes one good shot for you to say, let me play again tomorrow. I guess, yeah, you might say it's obsessive, because the day I'm not traveling and I have some time in my calendar, I go in, I try and get around.
Since you follow so much of golf on TV, I mean, there would be obviously international golfers that you are drawing inspiration in your game from as well. Who would that one person be, really?
Adam Scott.
Sure.
And I don't know if you follow, but last year he had a terrible meltdown in the British Open, you know, where he was up by 4 shots and he lost to Ernie Els. But the way he responded, and I was watching it, you know, and I've seen people really react very, very strongly.
Strongly,
you know,
right.
And now he's now #1 again, you know, and I think for me that again speaks to a lot of resilience and strength. And I think that's what golf teaches you, even as a person, beyond the game. Is a lot of patience, a lot of looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, I don't like what I see, because you hit shots that you can't even believe. And if you manage like that in the workplace, you will probably have a bit of a challenge on your hands. You know.
Right. On that lovely note, thank you so much.